Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Adobe Live. It's Monday, which is always the good start to a week, but it's also the 1st of February, and I'm joined by Sophia Emmerich. So
Oh,
please introduce yourself. Let us know why you're
yes.
here and what's going on.
For the first time in a long time, I'm on the guest side of the live stream. I'm a Berlin-based photographer. Usually I host some of these live streams here, but today, since we're talking about portraits, and that is mainly what I do, I'm going to be the guest and going to show a little bit of my workflow in Photoshop and answer all these questions related to portraits and taking photos of people. And I'm really excited because I really like the topic.
So yeah, this month is a month dedicated to people and portraits, I believe.
Yes.
So across the stream, we're going to have various little bits of focus on work to do with working with people, which could probably stretch to everything, to be honest. But when it comes to photography, of course, talking about portraiture, and I must admit, portraiture is probably an area of photography I would class as my weakest. So I'm hoping that I can get some questions into you of various different things. And I know one of the biggest topics is always about not necessarily the images, but just how you interact with the people who are taking images of. And I think that's probably where I struggle most with things. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Just to point out, if you're watching the stream over on YouTube, that's fine. You can hang out there. But if you want to join in with the chat, come join us on behance.net. We got a chat active already. And we've got a lot of people in there, as usual, who are here to say hi. So we can say hi back to a few. We got some Kirstys and we've got Kirsty, Keelan, Andreas, Angus, Gareth, Sandrine. Tim's in the chat as well.
Hey, Tim.
For those who don't know, Tim is the one who's in our ears, although I'm going to point out today, I'm not wearing my headphones. So we are.
If something goes wrong, we don't hear Tim.
Yeah, he's going to be away with the fairies. So yeah, people in portraits. This is something that I'm interested to learn a lot more from. So I think this should be quite an interesting thing. And we were chatting over the weekend, and turns out we've got kind of a flipped reverse role of how we got into editing. So I originally started my editing stuff in Photoshop, whereas you started in Lightroom, I believe.
Yeah, I started in Lightroom solely because I found it to be a bit more easy to learn in the beginning. For me, Photoshop was this huge undertaking and it was kind of frustrating. And so I was like, I'm just going to do Lightroom and do some small adjustments. And because I started out with I did event photography, like concerts, where you don't have to do a lot of skin retouching. And then I started from doing concerts to taking headshots of the musicians and working with them on their tour posters and CD covers. And through that, the editing had to be a bit like more high class, like when it comes to retouching skin and some more details. So I found myself at the point where I'm like, okay, I think I have to now edit that in Photoshop, because I feel like Lightroom is great when it comes to adjusting color and brightness and all these wonderful things. And it's a bit quicker for me as well. Like when I want to do something really quickly, I usually do it in Lightroom. But now, since I'm mostly doing beauty, fashion, and more artsy photography, I usually only edit in Photoshop at this point.
Right. So I guess going from the event scene, going from the wider shot, as you've gone in tighter and closer into your photography style, that is maybe where you've switched into the tighter editing in Photoshop. And
for sure,
I mean, you can still do a lot in Lightroom, but I know what you mean when Photoshop is just so much more dedicated time for editing your photos.
And also for me, editing, and that's also like today we're gonna do a quick run through because I take a lot of time like to edit and do like really small subtle changes just to see and build up how I want my final image to be like. And I think that is something I really like in Photoshop. Like you can go down with the opacity with a layer and just do really small things and see what works. So I really learned to appreciate that over the time, but I completely understand that for some portraits, Lightroom works just fine. Like if you don't want to go all into detail, almost as like beauty photography, Lightroom would work just fine. I worked with Lightroom for, I think, 2 years only before I was like, okay, maybe I should take this to Photoshop. Yeah. And I also know people that do like, just like edit some colors in Lightroom and then just send it over to Photoshop just to do the skin retouching. Like you can also mix it up, of course.
Yeah, we've got a question in already from Sandrine, asking, how do you persuade people to pose for you? And I feel like this is something that maybe has multiple ways. So that as a topic is probably something we might touch on a few times. But do you have any like first takes on how you even get to that starting point of saying, hey, can I take your portrait? Or do you only work with people who ask you?
I think in the beginning for me, it was taking photos of people while they're doing something else. So they're not mainly focused on you. So like I said, I started out with concerts where people, musicians needed someone to take photos of their concerts and they were not really paying attention to me because they were performing. And then the photos turned out well and they kind of already trusted me a little bit. And then, we went outside or the studio and I took some headshots. And I think it has a lot to do with how comfortable people are in front of your camera. So maybe if you're starting out, ask some friends or people that are already comfortable around you, like not a stranger, just to see if you can make someone feel like they're in a safe space. And are having fun, because I feel like a lot of people, obviously, if you're not a professional model, it's a bit almost uncomfortable maybe to be in front of a camera. So I think the most important thing is to create an environment where people feel safe and comfortable. And that can take time. Like I usually, when I now do headshots, like I still do headshots of actors and musicians, I plan about 2 to 3 hours just for some headshots because it takes time. And then after you've done that, word goes around and people see what you've done. And then I feel like it just snowballs a little bit. That's how it was for me. Like I took the first few headshots and people liked it. And the people that were in the photos liked the outcome as well, which is, I think, for me, really important that they like how you portray them. And then just other people ask, hey, can you do that as well? And so it's just asking friends, getting a little bit of a portfolio maybe so that people know what you can do. And then also just, create an environment that people feel comfortable in. So they can let go a little bit, because I feel like a lot of people, you can tell, even now, if I take photos the first hour, these photos are usually not good. Like
just warming up.
Never use those.
No, I feel the same when I'm out exploring, doing a lot of urban photography. The biggest tip I can always give is to just get your camera out as soon as possible, because you just warm up to just using a camera, just switching dials and doing whatever. And then because it's in your hand, you then start to see the things that you may want to take pictures of. Whereas before, if you saw them, you think, that would make a nice image, but my camera's in my bag. You'll never take that image. So by having it out means that you will do it and you just kind of warm up to it. So I guess it's the same with people, because another aspect that I guess could also be extremely difficult is photography is a very technical thing. And if you're trying to tell a narrative of within an image, and you're controlling that emotion with the lighting and the composition and perspective, and then you've got a human in the middle that you also have to control, and they've got their own physical facial twitches and everything, and there's just so many moving parts to it. And although you may be able to light something amazingly, if you've timed the expression wrong, it doesn't sell the image. It's I have so much respect for people who do portrait photography.
I also think one main thing or like advice that I would give is don't overthink the technical bit of it, because then you don't interact with the person in front of your camera. Like even like you said, the whole composition, the whole lighting can be amazing, but if the emotion is not coming across, if you can tell, and you can usually tell in the eyes of people that they're being a bit uncomfortable, then the image isn't really working. So I think the main focus should be creating a connection to the person in front of your camera, rather than trying to make every technical bit perfect. Because once you've created this connection and you're interacting with the person in front of your camera, you can still make adjustments when it comes to, you see, okay, the exposure is not right or something. But I feel like a lot of people just only look through their camera because they're a little bit focused on making it a technical perfect photo, rather than interacting with the person. For example, oftentimes when I shoot portraits, I don't look through the viewfinder. I actually use the screen on my camera, just so I don't have my camera in front of my face the whole time. In studio, I often just look through the viewfinder because of when you use a strobe and stuff like that. But yeah, just find a connection to the person in front of your camera and then adjust the technical bits and pieces. Because otherwise, if you lose the person, like if they already feel like you're not paying attention to them, it's really hard to create that connection and get a good image in the end.
Great. So should we jump into actually seeing an image?
Yes, of course. I don't know if you can already see something. This is the image that I thought, this is how it's going to look, kind of, hopefully, when we're done. This is one of the series that I've done recently that I hope a lot of people liked. Like, the feedback was quite nice. I think Sandrine already has seen some of these images. And I'm just going to delete all these layers here, and we're just going to recreate what you see now, just to give you some tips and run through what I do. So, we're just going to delete all of this here. Let me just mark all of these. And
there's definitely a lot of comments in the chat of feeling the same, of struggling to take pictures of people, or would rather be behind the camera than in front of it. I think it's very relatable, definitely.
Oh, also something that I've done in the past is let someone else take your portrait. Like, I don't enjoy being in front of a camera, but I've done it a few times. Like, if you have friends that are photographers or anyone that is willing to take a photo of you, try that. Do it. Be the one in front of the camera, because it makes you understand if someone tells you you're looking bored and you're like, this is just my face. But it's just like, you understand more when people give you directions, and you understand the feeling of this uncomfortable thing that you're being watched and you're being put on the spot, and you want to understand that. So I would encourage everyone that wants to do portraits and wants to get into portraiture, do it, like, be the model at least once to kind of understand that feeling. Okay, so you see, this is the image straight out of camera. This is what it looked like. And usually what I do first is I edit the skin, or I start with the skin. So I create a new layer. If I'm really organized, I name it.
If you're on my stream, you'll name it.
Exactly. So textbook, and then I zoom in. I mean, she has amazing skin, so we don't have to do that much. And then I use the spot healing tool, and I'm editing with a editing pad. And usually, or for a long time, I used to do the first step with the clone stamp tool, because you don't want to destroy the texture in the images. And sometimes when you use this spot healing tool and you use it in content aware, like you see up here, it tends to destroy the texture and makes it really like plasticky almost. Yeah. But now you can go here and go to proximity match, which kind of does the same thing as this, like the clone stamp tool. Because before,
Right.
when I was editing with the clone stem tool, you basically clone an area next to the spot that you want to retouch and then go over it. But now with the proximity match, it kind of does that for you automatically without destroying the texture.
Yeah.
So that's a really handy thing to have. And then, yeah, I have my brush, and then you see like these little pimples, just like tiny things, whatever.
It looks
I
like you're
can
using
see.
a Wacom tablet.
I do, yes.
Is that something that you've always found comfortable with?
Yes. I mean, the stuff that I do also when it comes to dodge and burn later, you cannot do that. You can. It's not that it's impossible, but if you do that with your mouse, that's a bit, you will go crazy, I think, at some point. Obviously, this is something, if you just, in the beginning, when I was taking portraits of friends and let's call them simple headshots, I was not doing skin retouching to the extent that I'm doing it now. And then you don't need it as much. And for color retouching, I mean, for example, what we're going to do later, like the color adjustments, you also don't need one, I think, in my opinion. The only thing I really think it is necessary for is like dodge and burn later, because otherwise it will take you just way longer, and it already takes a long time. So yeah, we can even remove some of these, even though it's technically not skin.
I remember when I
breaking the rules here. Yeah.
When I first got a DSLR, this was like 15 years ago or so now, and one of my mum's friends had a studio, like a photography studio. Went there with one of my school friends a few times and kind of got to know what it was like using a photography studio and lighting and stuff. Bearing in mind I was like 15 at the time, so just sort of playing around and seeing what it was like in front and behind the camera, and editing on a MacBook. And this was in the days of Photoshop CS1, I think I was using, maybe CS2, with just a trackpad and doing all of the retouching and everything on just the trackpad, a few hundred layers of things. And yeah, it's crazy to think of how much the software has scaled and what you can do with it now, because I was at times just waiting for my Mac to finish rendering something or to do like a little bit of clone stamping, and clearly had the patience of anything. Yeah,
I'm really like this tool, to be honest, because before, I mean, the clone stamp tool works wonders. I really like it, but this now is so easy. I'm trying to use it as little as possible because it can be a little bit destructive, but you also have to think about what are you editing for. Like I can get really into details about editing, but then you post it on Instagram, nobody's going to see these details. So you can do a lot of great edits and do like super delicate skin retouching, but if that's going to be rendered down just to be posted on Instagram or even shown on a website, which also renders it down because you can't have a huge image on your website, otherwise it takes ages to load, then it's not necessary. So I think for a lot of things, I really enjoy doing it. Like I'd usually just put on a podcast or something and then edit for a few hours. But I think for a lot of times it's not even necessary to go into crazy details, because people won't see that anyway.
Yeah, definitely. There was a good point on the stream with Vince a few weeks back, and talking about how, you know, deciding what do you remove from someone's skin and what don't you. And there was just a thought of, if it's something that wouldn't be there in 2 or 3 weeks time, then happily remove it. If it's something that clearly makes up someone's character and personality, then they leave it. And I just thought like that was a very simple way of explaining the idea of removing stuff, because it is always a subject that people are a bit touchy on, of should things be done? Should things not be done? And it does come down to the end result of what you're looking for. But do you have any thoughts like that? On what
for me, it's just, I want a photo to look like it was not retouched. That's kind of what I want. I want it to be like that people think, oh, this person like is glowing from within. Like, obviously I don't want people to be overexposed, but like have a radiance to them, but not be like, oh, the skin looks like plastic, or like this person looks unnatural or something. I want to enhance beauty rather than making them beautiful through editing. So the goal is to achieve a look that looks natural, that still shows texture of skin. Because I really think that's beautiful. Like, I don't like these images where it's like all one thing, one layer, and looks like a doll. So I do like that thought of like, if it's still there in 2 weeks, then leave it. For example, I would never remove freckles or anything. I think that's beautiful. And yeah, I think her skin is really nice. Usually when people have like a little pimple here and there, I'm gonna remove that. Also because I want the person to see their own image and be like, oh, I look good in that image. And I'm just out of experience know people are like, can you remove this, please? Usually how it goes. So I'm not gonna do much more. It's just really small. Well, you can see I did a little bit, like turning it on and off.
It's very subtle, but
it's just small things. And I also encourage people to turn on and off layers like that, because you sometimes don't see it anymore. Like if you've been retouching for like half an hour already and you're deep down in removing everything you can see, it can be a bit too much. And so just turning on and off the layers sometimes helps to realize, oh, I've maybe gone too far. So we're just gonna leave it like this, otherwise we will overdo it.
There's a question if you had a makeup artist on this shoot, or did you do the makeup, or did the model do the makeup?
I work with like for this shoot, I worked with a really talented makeup artist that I used to work with. Now she moved to a different city and I'm heartbroken. But I usually work with makeup artists, at least for these kinds of shoots, because I cannot do makeup. Like, can barely do my own, so I would never touch someone else's face and do makeup. But yeah, usually when I do headshots, the people do their own makeup. Also because usually people know their own face. And when I take headshots of men, there's usually no makeup. And for women, some of them even prefer to do it themselves, or if not, I just have a makeup artist that I work with.
Do you have any specific requirements or preferences if someone was doing makeup? I mean, obviously working with a makeup artist multiple times, you can form a relationship and grow together. But just thinking things like the way that light reflects off of certain textures.
So you need like for makeup artists, I think it's important to understand how light reflects on skin. So even if it, for example, looks matte in real life, if I have a flash or a strobe that is hitting like directly onto the face, because this, for example, you can see it in her eyes here, the little octabox that I was using. So that was directly pointing at her. So these here, that is not highlight, like not makeup, that is actually just the light reflecting off of her face. So if you would use highlighter on top of it, which would look good in person, it would be too much for this shot. Like it would reflect the light too much and then it would be overexposed. And also it's important to have a makeup that looks natural. Like she has foundation, she has concealer, all of these things, but you can't really tell. Like it's not. Sometimes when people do makeup for real life and not a photo shoot, it's to be seen from further away. Like we never zoom in on a person that closely. So it's like subtle, but still covering some bits just to reduce time of retouching, and understanding when it's too much and what to leave out, for example, highlighter in that way. Like she has a bit of blush and a bit of contour here, but that's it.
Mm.
So yeah, but I think that just takes practice and just finding someone that you can work with, and also trying different things. I also have other photo shoots where I want someone to have a lot of highlighter because I want this popping and reflection and all these things. But for this, it was supposed to be this dream in pink and bubble gum and really soft. So I usually have mood boards for every shoot that I do, and also for the makeup artist. So for this one, we had very natural look. She has this gel on her eyelids and then sleek back hair. So just, I think, talk to the makeup artist before what look you want to achieve, and then try it out, see what the photos look like, not just in camera, but also on a screen, because it's really hard to see on camera sometimes if you want to really have some details in there. But yeah, highly recommend doing that. So I'm going to do some dodging and burning just slightly. And if people want to know all the ins and outs of dodging and burning, I've done a live stream with Zoe a few months ago where she explains it perfectly. So I'm just going to run over it quickly now. Basically what it is you're going to use the brightness and the darkness to remove some air quote imperfections. So what you do is you have a curves layer and you raise up the midtones, and then you Command I invert it, and then you call this, I call it bright because otherwise I forget. So this is the bright bit. And then you get a brush. And I usually do it, I start small. I know other people do it the other way around. They start with a big brush and do some overall, lighten parts up. I start small. It's just how I've just developed it like that. And then I go really down with the opacity here at 10 and let the flow at 100. Also in the video, Zoe explains really well why it's better to have the flow at 100 and not a low flow and a higher opacity. So we're just going to do it because we want to build up the effect really slowly. We don't want to brighten everything up and then it's too much.
Yeah. I should go and watch that stream myself because I'd be interested to see the difference between those.
She's really, she shows it really well. It's just if you have the flow at 100, if I do one stroke, it's as much as can come out of my pencil. Otherwise I can go over this, or I have to go over the same spot multiple times. That would be just a quick explanation. So, and now I see over here that I have white in the front and dark in the back, which means if I'm painting now, I'm revealing the mask. If I would go on X, then you see shortcut just on X, it switches, then black is front, and then I would paint in back what I've just painted out. So we're just white has to be in the front. And then you see some of these darker areas, especially on her forehead here. So I'm just gonna paint over them to lighten them up to be basically the same brightness as the rest of her forehead.
I got a question here on how do you control the saturation changes when doing dodge and burn? Does that still come into effect when you're doing it with a curves layer, or is that only if you use the actual dodge and burn tools?
I never use the actual dodge and burn tools, but what we're gonna do now, which I forgot to do, which helps a little bit, you turn on a black and white layer, just as we're gonna delete it later. But that makes it possible to see the darkness and the brightness way easier. Because if you have it in color, sometimes, or if you've not done it for often, it's just practice. If you haven't done it for a long time, it's not that easy to see where is it maybe a little bit too dark, where do I have to make some adjustments. So if you just get a black and white layer as a help layer, then you can see it a bit better. Here you see that this is a bit darker and that here's a bit of a dark spot, and maybe for example down here's a bit of a darker spot. What happens to me usually is that I'm then trying to brush something and realize I'm still in the black and white layer. really make sure to go back to to the other layer.
That's a great tip. I sometimes if I'm out shooting, I'll set my camera. I can change the viewfinder picture profile to what's actually in the visible image afterwards. So I'll change the viewfinder to black and white, and you find yourself looking and composing based on light more so than anything else. Which of course is then a great way of, I mean, photography is the study of light, so it's the perfect way to improve on your images. But I've never actively done that with editing. That's a huge tip.
Yeah, and it's also because dodging and burning is working with light. Basically, right now we're painting in light into the areas that are a little bit too dark. So that helps to just make it easier and quicker. And that can take a lot of time. So I'm just trying to go over this as quickly as possible. So if there are any other questions, I got some questions yesterday already on gear that I use, and also on lenses specifically. And I think, first of all, it depends on the look that you want, but I would recommend a long lens, like something like not under 50. It has to be over 50, otherwise people look a bit too wide. I would recommend an 85 or 100, also because you don't have to be super close to people and you can still
helps
get a close shot.
Social distancing.
Exactly, especially now. But
there was a comment about that of how might you deal with social distancing with portrait photography, and using a longer lens is definitely one of those.
Yes.
But likewise, if you're wearing a mask, and I've struggled with this as well, is it fogs up the viewfinder. But you've already mentioned you use the screen quite a lot.
Well, I can't use this like when I'm in the studio, but that's also like now it gets technical for lighting. And you use a strobe. It doesn't really help you unless you have a continuous light. But if you use a strobe and you look through your display, you don't see your subject if, for example, you're only using artificial light. So I have to look through the viewfinder to even see a lot more. And that fogs up a lot. I did some shoots like this, for example, in the summer as well, in the studio, and then it's all with masks and window open. It was still summer, so we could have the window open. Now that might be a bit of a problem. And now I'm not shooting at the moment at all because it's not really working. So I'm just working on old photos to keep busy.
Yep. No, I feel that.
Yeah. And also what people asked me is about f-stop and stuff like that, like camera settings. Because I know that a lot of people are really into having like 2.8 and super bokeh looks. And I would not recommend that for portraits. I mean, if you want to achieve that look, but I think this image, I mean, I could look it up, but I would say it's like f-stop at least 8 or 10 or something like that, just to like, you want to have the whole face in focus, and you want to have these details, and you want to have a sharp image and not just the tip of the nose in focus. Because if you have like really, like you go really down on your f-stop, you can have the nose in focus and the rest is, and the eyes are not.
Yeah.
And that
especially if you're on a full frame.
Yes, and that also goes with
Sony A7S, is it?
This was a Canon 60 Mark II.
Okay.
Yeah. And then once again, if you're too focused on the focus, then you can't really engage with your subject, I feel like.
Yeah.
And in this case, I didn't really have to worry about that much. Just gonna, like before, turn this layer on and off.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you can see this. I don't know if Zoom kind of destroys.
No,
But if you
it's
look
coming
on
through
her
great.
forehead here, it just looks a little bit more smooth, I hope.
Yeah, it just kind of
And
cleans up the
yes,
sort of lighting of it. You're shaping it round and
yes,
softening it.
exactly. And yeah, I think it's also sometimes good to just zoom out of an image just to see what impact it has and if you like how it looks. Because otherwise, I sometimes feel like you're so in the details and it's also about the overall image. So I like to zoom out sometimes. So for the sake of, yes.
There's a mention in the chat actually about last time doing dodging and burning was actually in a dark room. And
yes,
that was where I
from.
first actually discovered the connection back. Obviously, being a young kid using Photoshop, you hear of dodging and burning, and then went and used the dark room and was taught about dodging and burning. I was like, this is where it comes from.
Yes.
Doing like a little paper clip with a cotton wool on it or something to like dodge an area in the center of the frame.
Yeah.
They were fun days.
So it's a really old tech, but I think it's so good because it basically uses the information you have in the image. You're not, destroying texture. You're not adding something to the image that's not actually there. We're just highlighting bits and maybe darkening some other bits. So
yeah,
I really like that technique, but I do know it takes a bit of time getting used to it. And a lot of practice. And yeah, if you want to see the queen of dodge and burn, you really should go check out Zoe because she is perfect. So I'm just gonna remove the black and white layer for now because I can also show you now the before and after. Just cleaned it up a tiny bit. And sometimes what I like to do, then I go down, darken it a little bit, invert it, call it dark. I call it dark because I always forget what dodge and what burn is. I have to admit. I just give it my own names. What I like to do sometimes, I darken the eyebrows a little bit just because I like I like the look. And then also, of course, if you know the structure of a face, which is important to, you don't want to, you want to enhance what is there and, for example, not dodge and burn away bone structure. You just want to support what is already there. Which is kind of, if you understand how people do makeup or the good way, when people know how to do makeup, it's a kind of the same. You kind of enhance what is there without trying to make it look different from what it is. And then I also go over the eyelashes a little bit just to darken that up, just to have a bit of a nicer pop to her eyelashes, a little bit over the eyes.
Do you ever leave the black and white layer on and think, oh, you know what, I kind of prefer this image down a black and white route, and then you change sort of direction of things, or?
Not really. I mean, not for me, because for me, color in my images is so important. The composition, or a lot of my images are about the color itself. Here, for example, her eyes and the background, and we're going to see later, I'm going to try to make that match a little bit more. And then how the blue works with the pink and stuff. I've never really tried black and white. I don't know why. Maybe I should at some point try a little bit of black and white.
We're just thinking with the
layer on
control layer you had. Yeah, it looked great, but also I'd say the black and white looked great as a tight crop. Whereas as you've zoomed out in the full picture, the color really helps show that sort of candy-like view of things, and the color is way more apparent then.
Yeah. Also, I think the black and white layer, just the simple black and white layer, is a bit too flat. Then you would have to add contrast to it. I mean, maybe I would try it someday if I see ooh, the colors really don't work how I wanted them. But usually I'm really into color. Like I really like colorful images. So I group this. I call it dodge and burn because we are organized. And now what are we have 20 more minutes. Okay, now we're gonna run through this. I get a curves layer. This is the first thing I do. I want to add a little bit more contrast to the image because I think it's still a little bit flat. So the usual thing, that is also the same thing, I think, for Lightroom, just creating a tiny S-curve-ish thing. Nothing too crazy and just subtle because I don't want to. I prefer to have a lot of layers. I don't know how you do it. I prefer to have a lot of layers that do small things than have one layer that does like the whole contrast thing.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. And it's amazing how so much of what we do is always just curves. It's just curves everywhere.
Yeah. And I'm just another one.
Yeah.
I also rarely go back and change a curve rather than adding another one. I'm like, I mean, I could have gone back and changed, I don't know, the darkness or like lifted up the darks a little bit. But sometimes I just add another one.
It
might not be the best way.
Like when you're cooking and you read a recipe for things, and so many recipes just start with, right, so you need an onion, some garlic. Next recipe, start with one onion, one garlic. It's always onion, garlic, tomatoes all the time.
Yeah, and here it's just like create an S-curve, another S-curve. So yeah, I like, let's see. Also, I'm a big fan of turning on, like turning on and off layers just to see what's happening. I like that. I also want a little bit more, since I want this cotton candy look, I'm also going a little bit to the red curve and adding a little bit of red into the highlights here, just to.
I mean, just these little tweaks are really adding that sort of essence of pop to the image.
Yes, exactly. I feel like it for a lot of times it looks like I'm not doing anything, but then I'm like, oh, when I turn it on and off, you can see that there's actually something happening.
Yeah.
So I like that. What I sometimes do rather than going lower here on the darks, I have this trick that I do. I've been playing around with Photoshop layers, just trial and error for years now. What I do, I get a black and white layer. I go on tint, and then I go to soft light, and then I let the really low capacity. Because that adds a little bit to it. You can barely see it, but if you look at her chin, I can right now a little bit more. It adds a little more of contrast into the shadows in this really nice yellow light kind of thing. Like, I don't know if you can see it. Doop. Like on her neck and on her cheek there. Turn on. Turn off. I like that look. I've just something really subtle that I kind of like rather than going lower on my curves.
Yeah.
Just personal preference.
And always starting from the least amount and then just bring it up.
Yeah.
And probably pull it back just a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that is usually also, sometimes I go back through the layers and change the opacity of things. Then I go to the levels because I just like how I can adjust everything quickly, and I like how I can control things with that because I want to go up in the midtones a little bit. Contrast here. I think it's just nicer to have the overview here. I can't even explain most of my workflow, to be honest. It's
all
just
about feeling.
what I like to do and what I found for me that it works. And I think I highly encourage everyone just to like pick out what works from other people, because that's how I learned. Just watching a lot of other people and then being like, oh, that looks great. I'm going to try that too. And then either it works or it doesn't. Okay, since we're running a little short on time, I don't know if you can see it, but I added a little bit more pink to this and brightened up the midtones as well. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to add more pink to her lips. Just to show how I usually do that, I go to selective color, go really pink on the lips here. We're not looking at the rest. We're gonna create a mask, invert it, zoom in, and then we just paint. We can go up on the opacity here, paint in the pink on the lips, and just there. And I mean, it's really easy if you mask things, if you just have a layer and you just want to adjust, for example, the eyes or the lips or something, you create a layer and then you can invert it and you can paint it, and you just paint that area and you're just affecting that area and not the rest of the image.
Do you find if you say you've got an edit like this and it's a series of images, they're all shot with the same lighting, it's just maybe the pose is different, or you get to the end and you realize, oh, I wish I'd used this other take. Do you copy all your layers over and then just tweak the masks, or do you start from scratch?
I've tried copying all the layers, but it usually doesn't turn out that well. And then I have to tweak so much that it's quicker just to do it again. I think I usually just try to think of what do I want the overall look of these images to be. And then I have my usual steps that I go through. And with this, the final thing that kind of makes the difference or like sets the tone is a little bit like the selective color, and then the grays and the blacks. Like I can show you later that for me does a big change in the images. And if that is the same in all of them, the small changes in like the levels or the curves doesn't have to be the exact same. It has to match the photo more so. Then for me, it's more important to work on the individual image and just have an overall color concept that I follow rather than copy pasting layers, because I've tried it and then it did not save me time in the end. So we can see we have her lips are, I hope you can see that because it's a subtle change, but I like it. So we're just gonna go and do selective color now for all of them. And that I just like to play around. What I do is I zoom out like so probably, and then I really go all the way and see what it does, just to know how pink do I want it to be. And just play around here. With the reds, it's important just to know skin tone and how to work with skin tones a little bit. There are a lot of different ways to adjust skin tones, like luminosity masks and other things, which would completely make this a 2-hour long stream. So we're not gonna get too much into it, but there's a lot of ways to work with skin tones to make them look nice and natural. And it's a tricky thing, I would say. Not to make someone look completely white or like completely red in the face. Find a nice balance. And then you can go through all these different colors and adjust as you like. Especially in this, I want to adjust a little bit the background. So the blues and stuff like that. And you can see here, I can really do a big change. And I just wanted it to be a little bit more subtle. So it works a bit better with the baby pink. So I'm going a little bit down on the black. And then what I do, and I think these three whites, neutrals, and blacks are the ones that you have to just do really fine adjustments, and it already makes a big difference. So since this is a bit of a pink image, we go like this.
I keep looking at that background and thinking, if I was back in my artworking days of having to cut out objects from scenes, like I used to have to quite often composite images together that had, say, an actor in front of something, cut them out and put them onto something else that goes towards like video thumbnails, movie poster type stuff. The amount of images that I were given that were taken in front of a bush or something that had a messy background. And I'd spend days just going through and creating masks of like hairline masks and removing stuff. I got pretty great at doing it and got a system, but if I had an image like this, those were the glory days.
Yes.
It's so clean, easy to cut out.
Did my camera just turn off? Am I seeing this correctly?
Yeah, it looks like you've vanished into the Photoshop abyss.
I mean, I honestly don't know why, but you can still hear me.
Well, we can still hear you, so...
Okay, so everyone focus on editing this image now.
So Sophia's now on the phone in the image.
Exactly, I'm the one speaking through the phone. I honestly don't know what happened. I mean, maybe it's the battery of the camera, but we're just gonna focus on the streamlight.
Don't stress too much, it's all fine.
I hope everyone knows what I look like at this point.
By now, if we've been watching the stream long enough, we'll recognize the narrative, and we know this is the turning point in the plot.
Exactly. Also, once again, it shows we're live. This is not pre-recorded. So let's zoom out a little bit and just to show you what I've done with the selective color. And I think it really adds to this cotton candy kind of look. If you see it's off and it's on, it's just a bit softer, a bit warmer. And that is what I wanted. And now for the final touch of what I do, I wanted to crop this in and have a frame around it with the color of her jacket, basically. And how I do that is I create, also, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of ways to do it, but I create a new layer. So I call it crop. Choops. I use like M as a shortcut for the marquee tool. You can then adjust here what kind of ratio you want, or if you want like just normal or fixed ratio or something. I usually use a fixed ratio, just personal preference. And then drag it until you see this red line that tells you, oh, you're in the middle. Sometimes, usually it shows that. Ah, here it is. Oh, it's always this balance act of letting go at the right time. Here we go. Then I create a mask. Like I click here, create a mask. You see, now we have this crop in here. Then I do Command I to invert it. Go back to my other layer. Get the bucket tool, which is shortcut G. Then in order to eyedrop the color of her jacket, which I want the thing to be like, I hit Option and just eyedrop the pink that I had here. And then just doop, click, and you have your little frame, which kind of, I don't know, I just want my images to be a bit like artsy. And then obviously you can also still crop it to look like this, for example, or do some other changes. That is completely up to personal preferences.
It just adds like a really commercial touch to it of you could see it being used in some sort of graphical use case.
Yeah.
Could add some typography to it and, you know, expand stuff beyond the frame, beyond that.
Yeah.
Play around even more. We could carry on and take this into InDesign and go further depths on things.
Yeah. So and just like to show where we came from, this was the first, like the initial image. And here we are.
Boom.
This is kind of what I do. Usually this would take way longer. So
you've done very well to cram that into an hour. That was very impressive. And to be narrating as well as you're doing it. I know that's a very difficult thing because you want to stop and chat and being able to do the two at the same time whilst we're live. And Tim's also replaced your
my lack of camera image
with an image of your avatar, and apparently it looks like you're laughing at me. So
which I am an actual like on video as well. So that's perfect. The image represents perfectly what is actually happening, even though you can't see it. So yeah, I hope people enjoyed that. I've never done this. I've never been the person showing her edits, because I find it to be something where I'm like, this is just how I do it. I don't have a lot of secret tips and tricks like Tony, but it's more like find what works for you and find what you like image-wise, just visually. And yeah, I encourage everyone just to play around a little bit. They're not mistakes in the sense of like you're not allowed to use a certain tool a certain way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's one of the beauties of working digitally on things, is you have that opportunity to experiment so much more.
Yeah.
And there are just so many ways of doing things. So yeah, it's always interesting to see other people's workflow.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and tips on that, especially on just concepts and things behind the camera. It's something that I personally want to learn more about when doing portraiture and other things. So thank you for that. I think the chat has been very active and loving going through Photoshop for a change.
Awesome.
Quite often we're in Lightroom when doing photography things. So yeah, it's been great to see all of your work. It's a shame your webcam's disappeared.
Yeah,
but at least the phone line's still working.
I really don't know what happened there.
Oh, I say that the phone line's just gone.
Oh. No, am I still there?
Back. We're good. We're live. Okay. We're still happening.
Oh, I really don't know what happened. Well, it can't be the battery, because it's a fake, like it's an actual fake battery, you know? It's not a camera battery. It's like connected to an USB stick. Like, I don't know. We'll have to find out. But at least we could finish this and people could see the image, which is way more important than my face.
Yeah. So to round out the show, so coming up on the stream this week, so tomorrow we have a Photoshop masterclass, sketching crowds. So we've got with Klaus and Tony, and then on Friday, Veronica and Emma going through some work from home diaries. So yeah, coming up on the stream this week on Behance. And I will be back, I believe, next week, not on your usual Monday slot. Yeah, this has been a great stream. So thank you, Sophia, for running through your work and some of your tips and thoughts and everything. And I look forward to having you back again soon.
Yes, we're going to talk about your YouTube channel at some point, I think, just to tease your people already. That's going to be in the future. And I'm going to make sure my camera works until then.
So, yeah, thanks everyone for joining today. And we will see you on another stream real soon.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
See you later, everyone. Bye-bye. Always peculiar.